What's up, everybody? Welcome back or welcome to the Protect Our Queens podcast presented by Basketball Society, where we are, as always, just two men who love women's basketball, who appreciate women's basketball, who respect women's basketball. With me once again, our guy, Dr. Not Dr. Dan Thompson. We are back from a full week-ish of Big Ten tournament coverage out there in the good old city of Indianapolis, Indiana. Dano, how are we feeling?
Feeling great. I mean, now that I've been roommates with Marcus for 3 days, we're still together and maybe even more united than ever. So a lot of people in long distance relationships, they meet one another and it throws off the vibe. Nah. That's not who we are.
That is not what happened here. It was a great week.
Oh, man.
Indianapolis, minus 2 hours, but whatever. It was a great week
Yep.
in Indianapolis, right? Big Ten tournament started on Wednesday. We were there until Sunday and witnessed the most lopsided Big Ten championship game in conference history. UCLA wins the Big Ten championship in 2026. 96-45 was the final score. 51 points in that game. The previous two games that were decided by more than 20 points. Maryland beat Iowa by 20 points, and Iowa beat somebody by 33 points.
Yep.
So UCLA by themselves almost matched the previous two largest margins of victory combined. It is insane what UCLA has done this year. We're going to talk about UCLA today. We're also going to talk about some unsung heroes from the Big Ten tournament. We're going to talk about some of our other takeaways, including some talk about Ohio State. And last but certainly not least, we are going to get into our Sweet 16 projections. Which teams out of the Big Ten have the best chance to make it to the Sweet 16? Because as we all know, Selection Sunday is this Sunday coming up, and the March Madness tournament starts next Monday. So please strap in your seatbelts, stay locked in, make sure that you are tapping in with us throughout the course of the show. Comments, Jeremy, our guy, good evening, always here. Scheduled football fan wants to know if we are recapping USA basketball. Not today, but soon. Very, very soon, we will be talking U.S. basketball, just not today. Strap your seatbelts, stay locked in, stay tapped in, join the conversation because Protect Our Queens starts now.
Protect our queens.
Do you practice this? Was this spur of the moment?
They put the ether beat on this.
I started paying attention to women's basketball in a way that I never had before.
In and out, crossover, she has all that in her bag.
I just think that Paige is more well-rounded on both sides of the ball.
It's all about her feel for the game, bro.
All of these girls seem like a WA guy that got a turnaround fade in the paint.
We don't need 7 games. We didn't need 6 games. We didn't need 5 games. 4.
Bowl games. 4 games. Shout out the Aces. But we are not here to talk about the Aces. We're here to talk about Big Ten basketball. And as is the case with all tournaments, whether it's conference tournaments, whether it's the NCAA tournament, whether it's middle school state championship tournaments, right? What we learn is that there's always a unsung hero or 2 or 3 of their tournament. So, Dan, I'll give you first crack at it here. Who are your unsung heroes from the 2026 Big Ten women's basketball tournament?
I think the team that might have impressed you and I the most that we didn't come in particularly locked in on were the Oregon Ducks. And no, that is not just because the Duck kind of spellbound us with his there. Let me be clear. We do not know the gender of the Duck, but the Duck, they will lure you in. But Katie Fiso, my goodness, when I watch her game and I see how fast she moves on the floor and how crisp she is in her actions moving to the bucket with her passes. When they were playing the third game in 3 days and they were still trying to find a way to hang on with Michigan, it was not as a result of her underperforming that they weren't able to make it into the semifinals. Katie Fiso was running around and exerting high-level effort for the entirety of that tournament. And 5'11", not necessarily an incredible outside shooter yet, but can get to her spots in the mid-range and can get downhill to score. And I left that tournament thinking to myself, oh, wow, for all the talk we have about some of these up-and-coming programs, Katie Fiso is a high level at college, not just in the Big Ten point guard. And she is a sophomore, and this is her first year getting real run. And so, yeah, I don't know if she's unsung in the grand scheme of that program, but in terms of like the college basketball consciousness, you're going to hear a lot more about the University of Oregon. And Coach Kelly Graves has given us reason to do it in the past. This one will come up and sneak up on people a little bit more. And Fiso, one of my favorite players to watch the entire weekend.
Katie was exceptional in all three of their games. I mean, she played great in the second half against Maryland. Which is unfortunate for me, right? But she had a really good tournament. You know who else had a really good tournament? Her teammate, Ahis Atute. And before I kind of talk a bit about why she's unsung and still is, even after the tournament, after we saw the all-conference team or all-tournament team, let's actually go back to – I asked Coach Graves a question about Ahis Atute, and his response was exceptional.
Hey, Coach. Ahis has – since we've gotten into conference play, come on a lot and been a lot more productive, but she does a lot of things for you guys that doesn't show up in the box score, right? Setting screens, her passing, the way that, like, just her knowledge of the game overall. When you look at how she's grown from the beginning of the season to now, what are some of the things that you like the most about that growth?
Well, it's a great question, and if you've watched her growth, you've seen her grow right before our eyes. Last year just didn't play a whole lot. Even early in this year, she was kind of a role player and continued to work hard and get better and be productive on the court. And I think now you're starting to see the realization of all her hard work. It's a shame she wasn't, didn't receive any kind of mention in our all-conference. She averaged 15.1 and 9.7, top 5 in field goal percentage and number 1 in rebound percentage, and she's a heck of a talent. So it's really been fun. I think she's just scratching the surface. I really do. Once she develops a perimeter game, she still struggles sometimes against length. Not necessarily skinny length, but broad length. Because she's an Adrian Dantley type. Look his name up for some of you young people out there. I know who he is. Our generation knows it. These young ones may not know, but and he was able to get it done at 6'3" or 4" around the basket. So she's kind of got a little bit of that. But I'm telling you, she's a warrior. She really is. We just got to keep her on the floor, keep her out of that foul trouble.
Stud. Shout out Adrian Dantley. I'm proud to say that I did not need to be put on the game with Adrian Dantley.
Likewise.
I'm very familiar.
Know too later on.
And I did appreciate that. But Ahis Atute, and I will say, in the post game of the Iowa's first win, when it was possible they could play Oregon, I had asked head coach Jan Jensen what she loved so much about their post play, and she was like, I just love the old school high-low look, having old school front court basketball. She gave a shout out to Ahis Atute. It was like she loves her game as well. Ahis, I feel like, isn't just an unsung hero of the Big Ten tournament or even of the Big Ten. I feel like Ahis Atute is going to have a very similar arrival onto the scene of women's college basketball to what Audie Crooks had her freshman year. Right? We kind of knew about Audie Crooks in the grand scheme of things, but that that class that she was in was loaded. Malaysia Fawali, Madison Booker, right? Hannah Hidalgo, right? Just so much talent in that class that she kind of, and also she went to Iowa State. So she kind of flew under the radar, was still really, really good her freshman year, obviously, but we didn't really talk much about her until the tournament. But you go back, you look at her freshman year, she had a solid non-conference play set. She had a very strong conference play, looked good in the conference tournament, and then really turned it on in the NCAA tournament. And I feel like Ahis Atute is kind of on that same trajectory. I mentioned on Threads the day of on Sunday after I voted, I said I put out my vote for all tournament team, and Ahis Atute was on my list. She did not
a zag. That was a valid choice.
Of course. And she didn't make the all-conference team. And I hate that I pointed out Hannah Stalky because I love Hannah Stalky a lot, and I had the opportunity to talk with her. But Ahis had 3 double-doubles in 3 games. 16 and 12 versus Purdue, 20 and 10 versus Maryland, 16 and 11 versus Michigan. And she didn't make the all-tournament team. And it just reminded me of how Kelly Graves said all week long, he feels like Ahis Atute didn't get the love that he felt that she deserved based on how she played in conference play. Ahis Atute is a really good basketball player, right? And I even said to you, Dan, when we watched, I was like, she kind of if you could take the motor and the effort and the mobility of Angel Reese at LSU and combine that with the offensive production and the post work and like just the body awareness of an Audie Crooks and put them together, you would get a His Atute. Like she runs the floor. She's a great screener. She's a great passer. Like she does all the little things really, really well. And she's like the perfect front court, like the perfect big to play off of a guard like Katie Fiso. And they have more than just Katie and Heath, but like those two specifically truly where I feel like unsung heroes of this tournament. And really their stock rose because of their performances in Indianapolis last week. But His Atute, my God, bro, I'm so excited to see what she does come March Madness because I think she's going to continue to elevate her stock.
Now, who are they projected to be up against in the bracketology right now?
So right now,
8, correct, or a 7?
They're projected to be a 7 seed, and they are in a bracket, ironically enough, with South Dakota State, West Illinois, and Iowa.
Oh man!
So we get the opportunity to see potentially a His versus Hannah Stalky and Ava Hayden, and I was so that conversation with Jansen, with Coach Jensen, like she kind of got a little bit excited about the possibility of matching up against these. We didn't know for sure if it could happen or not because obviously Oregon played after Iowa did that day when I spoke with her, but she kind of lit up a little bit when and she was kind of a little bit upset that she couldn't think of a His's name, but man, he's really good. She's really good, and I'm excited to see that stock rise in the tournament.
So, in terms of another person that I'm going to say Marcus kind of put me on to this player because I saw them play live, but it didn't really dawn on me her impact because I saw her at the beginning of Big Ten play and she proceeded to be so solid through all of conference play. This player is Elsa Limala. And I mean, do you want rim protection? Yes. Do you want playmaking out of the high post? Yes. Do you want efficiency at the rim? Yes. Do you want rebounding? Yes. And the thing that Marcus was saying over and over again during that UCLA game was feed her the ball.
Yes. Oh my gosh, bro.
Over and over again. And just like in the regular season, I think UCLA was played the best by Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament as well. And a lot of it came down to when they quit forcing it through the guard work and they found ways to get her rolling to the bucket. Now, the zag to that, and we're going to talk a lot about UCLA, is going up against is 6 foot or taller, save Charlize Ledger-Walker, who is just a tremendous point guard anyway. It's hard to just get simple post entries, right? It's hard to pass through people in passing lanes all the time. But Elsa Limala is a player that we're not just going to be talking about from the standpoint of being an unsung hero. This is a future all Big Ten player, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And the way that system is established, they're going to need a lot from her, both in this tournament run, but also as they continue to progress as a program. And I believe they're a 3 seed, but in the future, she's going to be a key cog of what might turn them into a 2 or a 1 down the line.
Agreed. And in their projections right now for bracketology, they're a 3 seed with Notre Dame as their 6. So
I love the idea of that matchup.
Is going to be, I'm not going to say the reason why they win, but should Ohio State knock off Notre Dame and get to the Sweet 16, it would be because they feed Elsa Limula the ball. Oh my gosh. The number of times she had free range to the basket and they just didn't give it to her. I was like, we gotta get her the ball. We gotta get her the ball. But like you said, it's tough when you're going up against a team as long as UCLA. My other unsung hero, and I don't even know if she really is unsung at this point, especially for me, because I talked about her before the tournament. I talked about her during the tournament, and that's all after. Chance Gray.
Yes.
Oh, gosh. Chance Gray. I told you before the tournament, I was like, you want to see a pretty shot? We sat here and we talked about AZ. We broke you and Martin broke down AZ FUD film, and you guys did spend a strong 5-ish minutes of that breakdown just talking about her shot and her shooting form. AZ FUD, really good shooter, percentage-wise, form-wise. Chance Gray, exceptional shooter, percentage-wise and form-wise. I don't know. I put this on Threads. I don't know how many times in what I believe the final tally is 5 times this year I got to watch Ohio State. I don't know how many times I saw Chance Gray miss an open look from 3. I know with almost 100% certainty, though, I don't need all 10 fingers to count those misses.
Mhm.
Like, she is such an exceptional. It's not even just like the shot. It's her feel for the game. Like, she knows when her team needs to get a bucket, but they also know when they need to get a bucket, and they know who to go to get that bucket. I was able to talk to Coach McGuff after the game, after they lost, and I asked him flat out. I was like, "How are we feeling about Chance Gray and like her ascension as a leader of these last 2 years, having come from Oregon?" And he was like, on and off the court, he's been exceptional. But the thing that he pointed out that I didn't really notice until after he pointed out was she's a vocal leader as well. Like, she's always talking on the floor, always pointing things out. And again, I think this Ohio State team has a chance to go on a run. And I don't mean like just to the Sweet 16 or to the Elite 8. Like, I think this Ohio State team, with as well-rounded as they are, I think they have the chance to go on a legit run this year. And a lot of it has to do with Elsa, like you mentioned. A lot also has to do with Chance, because Chance is, by my estimation, of all the players I've gotten, I know it's a really small sample size, but of all the players I got the chance to sit down and just watch this season, whether it's on a TV screen or in person or just highlights, Chance Gray, one of the best shooters in the country. Just form and consistency. She's up there.
In a remarkably overqualified second side guard. I mean, just think about that, right? So your offense is going to be initiated through Jelani. And if she breaks down the floor, you've got Chance Gray on the other side, who's at 6 3-point attempts a game, cashing in over 40%. Yeah, I think the thing that might cause Ohio State trouble is a little bit of the post depth. It depends on their matchup, though. And I think that's more of an issue as we process into like the Sweet 16. I think Notre Dame could catch lightning in a bottle, of course. And we're going to talk about this more. But man, having the luxury of that player on the weak side of the floor after the best dribble penetrator in the entire Big Ten breaks down, like, that would be my opinion about Jelani Cambridge. Yeah, see, come on now. Talk to me.
I had to put the bias aside. I could
in the Big Ten, I said.
Yeah, in the Big Ten, I had to put the bias aside.
Who are you going to put there?
Aluchi Economo is a really good penetrator. But I said I had to put the
roll. That was a home cooking eye roll, not a Aluchi is an incredible eye roll.
No, I know. We put the home cooking aside. You're absolutely right. But that's all.
Just give her a shout. Okay, so what are our biggest takeaways from?
Yeah, let's talk about those biggest takeaways. I feel like the biggest takeaway of them all has to be just UCLA in general, right?
Yes.
Like, how good is UCLA? And I feel like the best way to encapsulate that is to start by talking or showing the clip of Coach Tina Langley, who's the head coach of Washington women's basketball team. She talked a little bit about UCLA and the struggles that she thinks her team faced in their loss to UCLA in the tournament. Let's play that clip.
You guys kind of had a tale of two halves. The first half was very dominant inside, and then the second half, I was able to open things up in the perimeter. As you look to the game tomorrow against UCLA, where they obviously have a very dominant force inside with Lauren Betts, what are you looking to hope to kind of take from this to pull into that game tomorrow to have a similar result?
I'd love to take rebounding into that game. So, no, we understood the last time we played. I thought we need to do a better job in the paint and being physical and understanding the rebounding battle that will occur. And they're obviously big, and Corey does an incredible job. Her teams play incredibly hard. They understand the game really well. And so we want to go in and understand, like Avery said, our strengths versus their strengths, our weaknesses versus their weaknesses, and just make sure we're prepared to compete at a high level.
You know,
so what I liked
real quick, what Coach forgot to say in that quote was personal acquaintance of Dwayne Marcus, Coach Corey Close.
This is true. Corey Close follows me on Instagram now, which is amazing, by the way.
Yep.
And a lovely human being, Coach Close is. But
she is.
What I like to do a brief exercise with you, Dan, here, where I'm going to ask a question, and I would like just a very simple yes or no. Okay, so I took to threads during the Big Ten championship game. It was a blowout. I had against my blowout material, and I've come to the conclusion wholeheartedly that UCLA is the best team in the country. I think at this point it's unequivocal. Like, if you just put all of the biases aside, if you put all the preconceived notions aside of like UConn's the undefeated reigning national champion and South Carolina is the what at this point now? The 3-loss runner-up from last year. Like, if you put all that away and just think about all of these teams collectively and what they do, I think UCLA is unequivocally the best team in the country. And I boil it down to 6 particular boxes, right? So yes or no, Dan? The first box is, does UCLA have 1 or 2 players on their team that can take over a game at a moment's notice?
Yes.
Awesome. Does UCLA have
Kiki Rice and Lauren Betts?
Absolutely. Kiki Rice and Lauren Betts. Does UCLA have a strong supporting cast around those 2 players?
Yes. 6 future WNBA players and 1 player who is the second-ranked recruit in this freshman class.
Absolutely. Did UCLA dominate their conference this year?
Did they lose? Yes. They did dominate. They did not lose. No.
21-0, including the tournament, on the way to a championship. In fact, Dan pointed out to me, since joining the Big Ten last year, the only team they've lost to is USC with Juju Watkins. Every other team they've played in Big Ten play since last year, they've won. And in most of those games, they've won convincingly. All right. Number 4, does UCLA have an elite head coach?
Yes.
Absolutely, they do. Does UCLA have the necessary experience to live up to their championship expectations this year?
How many seniors are draft
6
eligible?
4 of them were on last year's Final Four team.
Yeah, I think they have experience.
And then the last question, this is all just subjective. Do you think that UCLA can hang with their out-of-conference peers, primarily Texas, South Carolina, and UConn? Because that's really where this conversation boils down.
Yes, and can I illustrate that real quick?
For sure.
So the team that played the most quad 1 games in the country this year, who would that be?
UCLA.
Oh, yeah. The 1 loss that they had to a quad 1 team, who would that be?
Texas in Vegas.
You know, the SEC tournament champion, Texas Longhorns. Okay. Yeah. Huh. I think they're pretty good.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty good. You know, and so some of what you'll hear is, well, what are they going to do if someone gets in foul trouble? And part of me wants to say is just like, yes, I understand that their rotation is about 7 deep, but you have to understand the quality of who the 7 are.
Yeah.
And because of how complementary their players are, you're not, even though their rotation is at size, they're not relying upon those players to have to play upper 30s either. They will if they have to, and they'll be prepared to in the NCAA tournament. But when I look at this team and their resume, and you say in a round robin tournament, they had 1 loss on a neutral site to the eventual SEC champions.
Yep.
And y'all, I think we need to work with people on the decontextualized and just not real takes about Lauren Betts. Okay. I understand that she is not a polished stretch 5. Okay. But you know what she is? She is like guard 3 people at the same time because she's able to navigate the drop and the pick and roll. She had Jelani Cambridge looking like she was an average player instead of a potential All-American. Lauren Betts took 1 shot in the first quarter of that Ohio State game, and she was dominant. I put together a compilation of 10 defensive stops that she made in that first quarter. 10.
And can I just say on Lauren Betts, I was wrong about Lauren Betts. There was a moment on the show, Martin and I, a couple of months ago now, I think, where Coach Close had posted on Twitter a 30, maybe 45-second clip of Lauren Betts in practice.
Yes.
And the caption of that tweet was, Lauren Betts is the most dynamic big of her generation, something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And I, admittedly, I thought that was that was an exaggeration of the truth.
A little overcooked.
A lot of overcooked, a lot of home cooking. And primarily for 2 reasons. Number 1, the clip she showed was a practice clip. It was before the season. But number 2, more importantly, most of the things Lauren was doing in that clip were free throw line area jump shots, right? Yep. There was a lot of post work in that video. So what I said in response to that video is Corey Close is, and you and I talk about this, she is one of those coaches that yearns but also like genuinely appreciates legit, authentic coverage of this game of women's basketball, right? And so my only pushback was not really so much the wording, But given the current nature of women's basketball and kind of the climate that we're right now and how there's still so many people who don't respect it, hate it, say it's not elite basketball. If your push for Lauren Betts to be the #1 overall pick in this year's draft is she's the most dynamic big of her generation, and your proof of that is a 30-second clip of practice, it's hard for someone who is not familiar with Lauren Betts or who is not a fan of women's basketball overall or a combination of the two to accept this evidence as strong support for your claim. Now, you fast forward to this past week, you were there right next to me. I was in awe at just the lateral movement from Lauren defensively. Like her ability to stay in front of one of the most dynamic, shifty guards in the country in Jelani Cambridge was impressive. And something that when you talk about Lauren Betts is not something that comes up often. Something else I thought was particularly special was her communication. Like, normally we see the point guards pointing to and where to go, right? Lauren Betts was facilitating the offense without the ball even being in her hand. Like, she's on the elbow telling Gianna Neepkins and telling Charlize Ledger-Walker and telling Kiki Rice where to go, and it's happening and it's working consistently. I was wrong about Lauren Betts, and I'm glad not only that I got the opportunity to just watch Lauren Betts for 3 days in a row uninterrupted, but also then get the opportunity to sit down and have those conversations on the back end with Coach Close about what it is really that she's seeing that makes Lauren Betts different. And then hearing so many other coaches across the tournament, unprompted, just talk about how great and how special Lauren Betts is. I was wrong, and I'm okay with admitting I was wrong.
Marcus, Shauna Green, after the UCLA game at Illinois, described her as a once-in-a-generation player. And that woman does not blow smoke, okay? Like, Lauren got into foul trouble in the first half, and I think she ended up, like, having maybe 2 points. And UCLA was in a tight game with Illinois, and she came back in the second half and was just tenacious. And I was impressed. A lot of the critique that I hear about her game offensively is that she's just throwing around her elbows. And there is tape from the past that might lead you to believe that that is a fair critique. What I've seen is a form of growth and patience, where what she's doing is she is feeling her defender and elevating instead of making unnecessary pivots that just obscure her effectiveness of moving directly to the hoop. And to your point, what you said about her ability to switch onto guards, like, they will switch her onto a guard and not in a scramble. Like, they will say, oh, we'll make this switch. We're cool with this. And then she will slide with that guard for like 15 seconds of a possession.
Yeah.
I think different teams are going to need to, we're getting ahead of ourselves from the WNBA level, look at what fit actually is. But her motor, her defensive instincts, her playmaking, for crying out loud, her ability to pass out of double teams, she does not get rattled. And that impressed me just as much as anything else. So,
yeah, for sure. Let's take a quick break before we get into our other 2 takeaways, and we'll come back and wrap that part of the conversation up.
I'm Dan. I'm from Illinois, and I've got 4 daughters. We love women's sports, and we love it not as a side conversation, not as a trend, but as high quality basketball. And that's why I'm here with Basketball Society and Protect Our Queens. We're talking real analysis, real respect for the game, and conversations that display we are actually watching the basketball. If you love hoops the right way, subscribe to Basketball Society right now.
So I want to switch gears for just a second, because we can sit here and talk about UCLA all night long, but as much as we could, I don't think anyone wants to hear that. Let's pivot for a bit. One thing that you and I definitely talked about in the lead into this, into the tournament, was whether or not the Big Ten was better than the SEC. And I think you and I both, in our own separate experiences within the week, aside from just what we were doing together, got a lot of hands-on, firsthand knowledge, but also like responses to that question from players and coaches in more ways than one. And you were advocating that the Big Ten is better than the SEC when we talked last week. We're now a week removed. We've been in Indianapolis for a week. We watched the Big Ten tournament, watched all these various teams. Do you still feel that the Big Ten is better than the SEC? And what from this week leads you to believe that still?
I think I was more nuanced, non-committal, but I would say I lean toward the Big Ten for sure. They are projected to have 12 teams in the tournament.
Yeah.
They have those 12 teams are in the top 30 in the net rankings. The next closest team in terms of top 30, which I know it's like a pretty arbitrary decision to say this is the number we're going to stop at, but the next closest team, I believe, is let me check my notes here. It would be the SEC. They have 9.
Mm-hmm.
The Big Ten has 6 projected host schools right now.
They do. That's half of all the schools.
And then what? And then the SEC has 5. Okay, so like I'm just saying from a data standpoint,
sure,
there are ways to define this. Now, there are things on paper and there are things that computers spit out, and then we will see based off of how the results go. But just like to go back to the UCLA conversation for a second, when people want to be like, well, when they face X, Y, and Z, we'll see how it goes. Y'all, like, they were undefeated in a conference that features 12 teams in the top 30 in the net.
Yeah.
That's not a cupcake schedule, not to mention the fact that every time they go on the road, they got to travel halfway across the United States, if not all the way across the United States.
Yes.
Like UCLA and Oregon and Washington were playing games in this tournament at like 9, 10 in the morning. Now, give them an entire week of prep. I mean, come on, man. Come on, man. Like, I'm just saying, like, these are motivated players. They've been close, but they haven't gotten all the way there. So there's like a ridiculous top dog. I think the SEC has more top level depth, but I think through like the breadth of the conference, to say that 12 of the 18 teams in the Big Ten are going to make the tournament and 12 of those 18 teams are in the top 30 in the net. And then you got a team like Indiana who beat Nebraska on day 1. And like Shea Chesky is the leading scorer in the Big Ten. She's not even going to get a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. Like, y'all, it's real out here. It is so real. And you don't have to like invalidate the tenure and the pedigree of the SEC just to recognize that college basketball is in a better place, because we're seeing this elevation in multiple conferences right now.
Absolutely. I mean, again, going back to the conversation I had with Coach McGuff, I asked him the question flat out. I was like, what makes this the best conference in the country? And he said, like you said, like just a lot of conferences are top heavy. There's not a lot of conferences that are deep. And he pointed out to Indiana. He was like, Indiana was the 13 seed. That's a good basketball team. They were the 13 seed in the tournament. And in a conference of 18 teams, 12 of them are playing in March Madness. If you're not good at math, I'm a math teacher. Let me help you. 12 over 18, if you reduce that to a fraction, a simplified fraction, that's 2/3. 66.6% of the conference is going to be playing in the tournament. That is, if I'm not mistaken, by far the largest percentage of a conference playing in the March Madness tournament starting next week. So you have that part of it. Then you get to this part of it. And I'm glad Jeremy comments that. Jeremy says UCLA is not better than last season. They can get beat, not in the Big Ten. If UCLA plays either UConn, South Carolina, or Texas, they will be beat. Let's go back to the conversation we're having about the supporting cast, right? And this is, again, a testament to the greatness of the Big Ten. Sienna Betts, UCLA went on like an 11-2 run at the end of I think it was the first quarter against Iowa. Sienna Betts scored 8 of those points. Sienna Betts, little sister to Lauren Betts, is not a player that over the course of the season we were marveling over. Yet she scored 8 of 11 points on a run by herself. Let's switch over to Angela Dugan, who is the 6th player of the year in the Big Ten this year. She also has moments where you're just like, this is a really good basketball player. Then you go to Gianna Negan, who in 2 games of their 3 did not have a strong first half, had an exceptional second half. So much so to the point where Coach Close said she's a shooter, and every time she puts the ball up, no matter what the splits are, I expect her to make the shot. So here's the thing. We can talk about the fact that UCLA is dominating in their conference competition, but here's the thing. I would rather, and this is no slight, but I mean, we have to call a spade here. I have more confidence in UCLA and their domination over the Big Ten, which is putting 11 other teams in the tournament not named UCLA, then I have the confidence in UConn dominating the Big East. When the Big East has two teams in the tournament, UConn and I think Villanova.
Yep.
The only two teams out of the Big East that are going to the tournament. Now, again, that's not to disrespect the talent, the coaches, the players in the Big East. But when you talk about UConn and UCLA, or South Carolina and UCLA, or Texas and UCLA, right? It's not just about those teams individually. It's about the conferences they're coming from. Now, South Carolina and Texas obviously come from the SEC. They just played an SEC championship game, and Texas looked great in that game. But the Big Ten, like any one of those teams really from this past week, we'll say maybe 5 of the teams that we saw play basketball last week, and I think there were 14 of them. I think 5 of them, if one of those other 5 teams won the championship on Sunday, you wouldn't have been surprised. If you looked up and Michigan was the 2026 Big Ten champion, that wouldn't have been surprising because they have 2 really good guards and they got a really good head coach. If Iowa won the Big Ten championship, that wouldn't have been surprising at all because that was their 7th appearance or 6th appearance in the last 8 years in that game. Wouldn't have been surprising. If Maryland somehow found a way to win, you would not have been surprised because they have a really good coach in Brenda Freese. I can go on and on and on. So the Big Ten in totality, from top to bottom, right, has really good teams. And that's not to include another team like a Penn State, who's got a player in Kimmy McMillan, who's a flamethrower, who just off the strength of her alone, they could have maybe won a game or 2 last week if they were able to make it into the tournament. That doesn't even include teams like Minnesota and Michigan State, who have gotten not really a lot of love nationally out of the Big Ten, except for within Big Ten conversations. And they are also projected to be host cities in the tournament. Like, the Big Ten is a really, really, really deep conference. So let's switch gears, because one of my biggest takeaways actually feeds right into the Sweet 16 conversation that we're going to have. Because my big takeaway is I think Ohio State's still underrated. And I don't think, and I don't just think this because I've been saying it all year. I think it because they're a really well-rounded basketball team. And like I said earlier, Ohio State, bro, like, I think they'll make it out of their quadrant. I think they'll definitely make it to the Sweet 16. I would not be surprised if Ohio State was an Elite 8 or honestly even a Final 4 team, because they have all the things you need, right? They have a really well-rounded basketball. It's not just Jelani Cambridge. It's not just Chance Gray. It's not even just Elsa Lemula. You also got Kylie Kitts, who plays off of everyone on that floor really, really well. You've also got Kennedy Cambridge, who I'm not
4 steals a game,
averaged 4 steals a game. And the only player I know off the top of my head that averaged more steals per game than
Hannah Hidalgo
this season was Hannah Hidalgo. And you've all seen the clip. Hannah's a thief. And she can't be trusted. And we love her dearly for that, right? But then you also kind of get into the coaching. And Kevin McGuff, I think, is one of those coaches that doesn't get a lot of love because his coaching style is not the demonstrative kind, right? Like some of the best coaches in the country, they've got a little bit of demonstrative to them. Don Staley, Kim Mulkey, Gino Uriyama, right? Oh, Vic Schaefer, Coach Yo, like a lot. When we talk about the best coaches in the country, we see him get a little bit riled up. Kevin McGuff, for the most part, he has his moment. He's very, very even keeled, and his team responds to that. One thing I thought was interesting and kind of to me spoke to the culture of Ohio State is generally you do a press conference, coach does opening statement, players talk, players leave, then it's just coach. Ohio State was the first team of the week in the course of the tournament where the players were done getting questions and players didn't move. They stayed there.
Said, keep them here.
With their coach. Keep them here. They stayed there. And when I think about just how that translates to on the court, they trust him. Like, they have his trust. They have his undivided attention. Those timeouts are never anything like too crazy. There's not a lot of yelling going on. And that translates to being on the floor where Ohio State is never out of a game. They had 3 games earlier this year where they were down or like tied going into the fourth quarter in double digits, definitely down double digits. They won all 3 of those games. One of them was against Maryland. One of them was in Jersey against TCU. And there was another one I can't think of. But like, that's just who they are. And Ohio State, man, I don't think they're ever, even in the game against UCLA, like they were never really out of that game. It's just, again, it's really hard to beat that UCLA team, but they were never really out of that game either. I think Ohio State, if they can get it together, we can see them in the Elite Eight or maybe in the Final Four.
So a bridge between that team that you're talking about and a team that I want to talk about is the similar demeanor, albeit like kind of in a different way. When I think about Jan Jensen, okay, the thing that I would tie together isn't necessarily their external demeanor, because whereas Ohio State's coach is very, reserved, Jan is like, wow, but like not in an out of control way, in an enthusiastic way. But the way in which she uses that is for enthusiasm and encouragement, not to be caustic, not to embarrass her players. And I mean, think about like what we're dealing with at Tennessee right now, for example. And you can see some of these examples of situations where we have adult coaches, and obviously these are young adults that they're coaching, like scapegoating their players on live TV. And I watched Jan in particular, both in the game that Illinois played at Iowa while I was there in Iowa City, and in the Illinois game against Iowa, where she had put her team's like deepest reserves in for the end of the game. And then Illinois ran off a 15-0 run. A lot of coaches would have gotten demonstrative, would have ran back to their bench, put their key rotation players back in. She knew that the game was out of hand. She let her team seal that win for her, the bottom end of the bench. And I watched her demeanor in that huddle, and I found myself thinking, she actually is for these players.
Yeah.
And I asked Ava Hayden about what it's like to be coached by Jan Jensen. And that was one of the big things that she emphasized was, this is a person that brings you along. This is a person that builds you up. This is a person that holds you accountable through like process, not through like, there's this cathartic thing that adults in authority do a lot of the time, where it's just like, I'm going to yell and it makes me feel better, and therefore it's the right thing to do. And let me tell you, as a dad of 4 children under the age of 8, right? So I just really respect her poise. I respect that she is there. Like, she is truly like, there are coaches that lead by dragging people, and then there are guides on the side. Yeah. Jan Jensen is a guide on the side. And then when I look at their post-to-post connection between Ava Hayden and freaking Hannah Stolke, my Lord. I mean, and then you look at taking a kid who got some starting time at Georgia Tech and bringing her in and making her the 5'4" supernova starting point guard, Chit-Chat Wright. I mean, the contribution
from 3 in February.
Yes. Yeah. The contributions from their wings across the bench. And not to mention, like, look, if we think a team is going to upset them at Carver Hawkeye with 15,000 screaming Iowa Hawkeye fans, I just have a hard time seeing that in any reality. So that is a team. There's one team. I know.
There is one.
I know. Why don't you talk about this team who happens to not be in that quad, but go on. Go on in.
There is one team. There is one team.
Go
Not
ahead
even
and
that team, it's your thing. I'm talking about the team that's in that quad. The Oregon Ducks, man. I think the Oregon Ducks could go into Iowa and get a win. And I think it starts with Katie Fiso and Ihisa Tute, obviously. But it also starts with Coach Graves. When you talk about being a guide on the side, again, like, he fits into that 100%.
Yes.
The one thing I thought was so funny, and you and I laugh about this over the course of the week, is obviously Oregon being from the Pacific Northwest, coming to Indianapolis, time difference. So Oregon, because they were on the bottom of the bracket, they had the last game every single night. And Coach Graves, without fail, every time was like, dude, we're not doing a 9:00 shoot around. It's just not happening. Like, our players need the rest, and so forth and so on. But what I loved about that is not even just like the idea of like the logic behind it, but like, there's not a lot of coaches that we see that would do that. Like, there are a lot of coaches that would put you in that position. And his players, I mean, again, even in a loss, like, I went into the locker room and talked to a couple of players and just kind of talked about, like, how the season felt, kind of how he, asked him how he felt. Obviously, he is always so proud of his players and always speaking the highest. Again, we played the clip earlier where he was just flabbergasted that Ahisa Tute was not even an honorable mention for an all-conference team, right? I asked him about Katie Fiso before the press conference, and he said he thinks that he's coached, and he said it, he's coached a lot of really good guards. Some of them are in the Hall of Fame. He thinks he's up there, and he thinks she's up there. And that's high praise for a player in Katie Fiso that, again, like, isn't a household name, but he thinks she's a really good basketball player. Then you have those around them, and I just think the way that Oregon plays basketball, right? I think it meshes perfectly with the way that Coach Jensen likes to coach her team. The high-low style of play. You see a lot of that from Oregon as well. The teams are similarly built. They're similarly constructed. I think Iowa has more star power. Obviously, Hannah Stalky, Ava Hayden. You obviously have Chit Chat, right? You go beyond that. There's Taylor Strimlow. Like they definitely have a lot more just overall talent and just overall star power. But in 2 games against Maryland, Oregon went into half down. And they came out of the game with a win. Just off the simple fact of them being able to see what worked in the first half, stay with that, see what didn't work in the first half, move away from that, and just really lock into the simplicity of doing what works for us to succeed. And the in and out of half adjustments, I think, is the part about his coaching that I loved the most. Because there were a couple of teams we saw in the tournament where it took too long for them to get away from what wasn't working. And by the time they kind of started clicking, it was just too little too late. Oregon's one of those teams, I think, that's never not out of a game. And going into the tournament as a 7 seed with a chip on your shoulder with a lot to prove, that matters. And I think maybe they could knock off Iowa. And for what it's worth, it would be an exceptional display of basketball, I think, to see Ahisa Tute have to go up against Hannah Stalky and or Ava Hayden for at least 30 to 36 minutes in that potential matchup.
Yeah, it would be lovely basketball. It's one of those ones where styles make fights, right? So
Absolutely.
You look at, please, every chance you get, this is our plea. This is the Protect Our Queens Big Ten recap plea. Watch Ahisa Tute every chance you can get.
Please do. Please do.
Do you want to hit one of your other teams?
I do.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Got it. The Maryland Terps. We got to show them love. We got to show them love. It has been an exceptional season of Terps women's basketball. All right. And the first time Dan and I did a show together, I harped on the fact that this has been an exceptional coaching job for Coach Brenda Fries this year. 8 new players coming in. Kayleen Smeichel, who's one of your best players last year, didn't really play much at all this year. Bree McDaniel, one of the best players from last year, did not play at all this season. They lost Ava McKinney to an ACL injury. They lost Leah Barthelme to an ACL injury. You see Addie Mack and Kendall Walker step up as freshmen and just really lead this team as point guards. You've seen, obviously, Lucia Kanawa come in as a junior transfer from the ACC to the Big Ten and just get better game after game after game. There was a stretch at the end of December where she set her career high like 3 games in a row. Like there was a new career high 3 games in a row. You've got Sailor Poffenbarger, who's going to the league in a couple months. You've got Yarden Garzone, who's going to the league in a couple months. You've got Izzy Ozzy Mamadou, who I love. Just the energy, the passion, the effort, the motor. But, and again, this isn't just about the roster, right? Like, why can they make the Sweet 16? Because as Coach Fries has said all year, they're right there. There has not been, I would say, with an exception of the loss to UCLA, which was just a complete flip of a switch for UCLA in the second half, which is what turned that into the blowout that it was. There has not been a game this season where you've looked at it and Maryland was not at some point in their losses in firm control of that game. And it was a combination of just foul trouble, missing free throws, injury stacking up, being tired, that just ultimately lost them that game. All credit and all respect, obviously, to the teams who handed them their losses along the course of the way. But this is a Maryland team that, as Brenda Fries mentioned in their press conference after the game, was counted out by a lot of pundits, by a lot of people across the country about what they could do. I mean, obviously Cheyenne Sellers isn't there, right, because she's gone off and graduated, right? And again, with Kayleen and Bree, like, really, what can this team be? And this team started the year off perfect in non-con and was an undefeated team, one of the few undefeated teams going into conference play in the Big Ten. And consistently, despite their losses, has still been one of the best offenses, one of the best rebounding teams, one of the best defenses in the country from start to finish. And they're going into a bracket right now where they are projected to be a host city or a host site again as a 4 seed in a section that has Virginia or Arizona State, Miami of Ohio, and then Ole Miss. Now, I would love to see that potential 4-5 matchup.
That is
of
going to
Ole
be
Miss and Maryland.
insane.
That would be an exceptional display of basketball and an exceptional display of coaching as well between Coach Freeze and Coach Yo. But this Maryland basketball team has Sweet 16 potential written all over them. And I think a lot of Terps fans this season, just from what I've seen on Twitter and what I've seen on threads, they're frustrated, right? This is not the year that, they thought we were going to have. And there's a lot of frustration with kind of the way that some of these games have unfolded, the way that the coaching may have looked. But what I would say is, as someone who went to 13 to 15 home games and watched their game at the Big Ten tournament, Brenda Freeze did a damn good job coaching this team this year.
Hell yeah.
There are not a lot of coaches, despite their tenure, despite their status, championship or not, albeit it being 20 years ago, who could have taken a team with 8 new players and have them finish the year as a top 20 team ranked in the country with a shot to be ranked or to host in the tournament. I believe they are 14th in the net and 17th in the AP poll or something like that. So they are right on the bubble. It could go either way, but they're according to ESPN, they're likely hosting. There's not a lot of coaches who could have done that. And to get the buy-in from freshmen and to get the buy-in from transfers and to still go out there and produce. They were a top 10 rebounding team in the country by margin, a top 10 scoring team in the country by margin, a top 10 scoring team by points overall for much of the season. That means a lot for this type of a team that still has its issues, still needs its things that it can work on. I think this is a team that can be in the Sweet 16. And I think if the matchup is favorable, this is a team we can see, honestly, in the Elite Eight. They got bounced out last year by South Carolina, the eventual runner-up. This is still one of the premier women's basketball programs in the country.
Yeah,
and that starts and stops with the coaching that Brenda Freeze continues to display at such a high level year in and year out. That's a Sweet 16 team, if you ask me. Home cooking or not.
Yeah, home cooking time for me. I need to give the case, not that I believe this is going to happen, but I think there is a pathway to my hometown, Fighting Illini, Illinois women's basketball team, making it out of their opening pod. Now, there's a number of different places where they're projected to go. I've seen them going to Baton Rouge with LSU. I've seen them in another bracket where I think it's the Her Hoop Stats bracketology, where they have them going to Durham with Duke. I've seen another one sending them to Nashville with Vanderbilt.
Nashville.
So here's my case for them. 4 years ago, before Shauna Green showed up at the University of Illinois, that team was 7-20. The very next year, they won, I believe, 22 games.
Wow.
They have, in her 4 years here now, this would be their third trip to the NCAA tournament after not having been forever. And the only time they didn't make it, they won the women's basketball invitational tournament in Indianapolis and beat a number of solid high major teams in the process of getting that first postseason championship in program history. The things that I want to remind people of all the time is that this is the youngest team in the Big Ten. It is the third youngest team in the country. So when that's the case, and when they're only 2 losses by double digits this season are to Michigan at Michigan the day after they lost Gretchen Dolan, who's their second leading scorer and assister, or against UCLA at home, whom they had the game tied with in the fourth quarter. This is a team that does not beat itself. They don't. They can get off to slow starts from time to time, and that's been a thing that we have talked about over and over again. But players to look for, and a player who did earn Big Ten honorable mention, Sierra Parchment, a freshman out of Ontario, Canada, it just immaculate hooper. She went into Iowa, and in the first half, I want to say she had 15 points and 8 rebounds at Carver Hawkeye. In Illinois, we're tied with Iowa at halftime at the end of the third quarter, and we're up 6 at Iowa before they ultimately succumbed to Iowa in their house. Barry Wallace, first team consensus all coaches, second team all media Big Ten. Yeah. The first kid who really is McDonald's All-American said, I believe in this program because intangibly of what these relationships mean to me in the recruiting process. So Illinois has been shooting the cover off of the basketball, and they play a form of contained shell defense that you're going to have to win basketball on their terms if you want to win. So do I think that they could take care of in the first round Clemson or Colorado? Yes, but that is not to say that those are walkover teams by any means.
Sure.
I have a particular desire to see them get into that Durham pod because I think, based off of what I've watched of Duke this year, and I've watched a healthy amount of Duke, that Illinois has both the talent and the scheme to make their life hell and to send the Cameron Crazies home sad on their court.
Look at you.
Now, I don't know if that'll happen. I don't know if that'll happen. I think it would be much harder to go to Vanderbilt personally, based off of freaking Michaela Blake's
National Player of the Year, Michaela Blake's.
And then Aubrey Galvin, decent player.
National freshman Jazzy Davidson. I don't know. But still, Aubrey Galvin's a dog.
I'm just telling you, man, this class that came in was the 7th ranked recruiting class for this year. That catches people by surprise, but the discipline and hard work, and you and I talked about this the first time we potted together, the discipline and hard work of that program has caught up with the quality of recruits in a way that now, Aaliyah Guyton finally got some practice time under her feet. She was a transfer from Iowa who was the top recruit out of the state of Illinois, I believe, in the year of 2024. I would give them a genuine chance. Getting out of the 8 into the 7 with the run they went on, beating Michigan State and basically soiling Michigan State's chances at being a host school because they knocked them out of the Big Ten tournament. This is a team, and I hate to bring this up so late in the game, but they had a signature win on New Year's Day against this program from, was it College Park? Is that the name of the town where the University of Maryland is from?
Damn, you said we weren't going to talk about this anymore. You said we weren't going to talk about this. We're going to bring this up anymore.
All right. Well, I'm going to fade to black, but just know that just know that the reason why Marcus and I are so high on these programs is because of the quality of people that are involved in them and because the consistency of work that we see. That's a through line that I would notice with Brenda Freeze and with Shauna Green is the players work.
They do. They absolutely do. You know who else works? The lovely people who watch Protect Our Queens every single week. We appreciate you guys for tapping in with us. Thank you guys for watching. If you're not already, please make sure you are subscribed to Basketball Society so you don't miss any future episodes of Protect Our Queens, including the episode of Protect Our Queens that'll be tomorrow, where for the first time in 2 weeks, Martin Sories will be back on the show. Not necessarily because he's gone anywhere, just because Dan and I have been so obsessed with vintage basketball that Martin has decided to graciously let the asylum from the yard, essentially. So we are glad that there is still a show to come back to for him. But we will be back. And Martin, unfortunately, does not agree with me that UCLA is the best team in the country. So we've got to put the boxing gloves on and have a bit of a heated debate. But it's okay. It'll all be in love.
He thinks UConn, I would assume?
Knowing Martin, I would say, yeah. He probably thinks it's UConn. I don't think he thinks it's Carolina. But, it's fair to think of UConn. But UConn's not the best team in the country. And that's okay. It's okay for UConn to not be the best at everything. By God, they just had the number 1 overall pick. Stewie just won an unrivaled championship. They just won a championship last year. There's a lot to love about UConn. I get it. They ain't the best team in the country. That belongs to UCLA. And if you want to listen to me explain why more in depth, then you need to be back here tomorrow watching the show. So for our guy, my friend, my buddy, Dr. Not Doctor, Daniel Thompson, I am Marcus of the Protect Our Queens podcast, signing off. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, go Terps.